Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined by Kyle Dvorchak and Denny Carter as we preview the entire Week 11 slate, not including Thursday Night Football because it'll be over by the time you're listening to this. But a lot of big games this week. The Cardinals and Texans, two teams heading in the right direction. The Eagles and Chiefs rematching the Super Bowl. That is going to be a humdinger of a football contest. The Bears getting Justin Fields back against the Lions, who are becoming something of a shootout machine. The Raiders, the Dolphins, lots of other teams in the NFL playing football games this week.
Yep.
How are you guys doing? How are we feeling this fine Thursday? Take people behind the curtain. Some people are, quote, mad at me because we had to, quote, podcast 4.5 hours earlier. And I don't know. How are you guys doing?
In the fantasy football industry, we are not used to working before noon. So this is, I'm kidding.
I did notice that Denny typically has some sort of seltzer water, and I typically have either iced tea or just like a cooler of water. And we both have coffee. I think I saw us both chugging aggressively on our coffee.
I'm drinking coffee.
The worst audio bit ever is my house drinking water.
My kids got me a new cup.
I Heart Dad is what it says.
I Heart Dad, and it's from the 80s, I think.
It looks stupid. No, it actually looks very charming, actually.
For the audio listeners, Denny did an actual spit take when Pat said it looks stupid.
Yeah, spit all over my computer.
Very charming. Denny's usually on his third Miller Lite by now.
No, you've had to talk to me about that, actually.
We're going to see what he's like on Just Coffee. No, it's a delightful mug. Denny, a delightful children. My mug, not to call out my company, but I keep drinking out of this NBC Sports Edge mug, and we're not called that anymore.
I still wear my NBC Sports Edge white hat because it's like a nice neutral white. I can wear it with any colored shirt and it won't clash. But not to call it my company, send me a new all white, please, hat.
Yeah, I wear that hat all the time.
It's funny, you guys are so out of style here. My Rotoworld t-shirt, So I don't know what's up with you guys, but I keep up with what's happening.
Ever since Denny's lawyers went to work, he's got way better swag, way better
He's got
stuff.
sick drip, as the lawyers seem to be calling it.
Yeah, no. If Denny says drip, he is immediately fired.
I actually am not legally allowed to say that.
He is not legally allowed to say drip. We're not legally allowed to quote riff, to quote banter anymore. We have to now talk about fantasy football, and that includes the Cardinals and Texans linking up for this week's little shootout that could, with two teams heading in the right direction. A 49 total to fair. Denny, we will get to Kyler Murray in a second, but I want to start with the Texans. Everyone is understandably excited about C.J. Stroud's surging play. But you've been kind of sounding the alarm a little bit. The underlying data still suggests this wants to be a run-heavy team. Nico Collins is rushing back from injury this week. Noah Brown isn't practicing yet. Some banged up in the receiver core. Just what do we think we're going to get from the Texans offense against the Cardinals?
Yeah, I mean, look, we love PFF Bobby Slowick, PFF Bobby, the offensive coordinator of Houston. We do. For whatever reason, Bobby wants to keep the ball out of CJ Stroud's hands to an extent. Okay. I know Stroud is still seeing some volume because the Texans honestly have had kind of insane overall play volume, offensive play volume.
Their games are fun, but their individual play calling, as far as just run versus pass, not nearly as fun as you'd expect.
Yeah. So they've been under their expected drop back rate in 5 of the past 6 games, including last week against the Bengals. I was a little bit surprised to see this. Maybe you guys would be too. 6% under their expected drop back rate against the Bengals. Houston is the 7th run heaviest team in the red zone. And now this week they face an Arizona team that is the league's 5th most extreme run funnel defense. They are a bad run defense as well. I think we are going to see 1.2 million carries for Devin Singletary this week.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, they are 4th in the NFL on run rate on early downs. By EPA per rush, where do you guys think they rank on early down runs?
They're bad.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, how bad do you think they are?
30th.
No, 31st. And because they're tied, they're dead last, just coincidentally tied at 31st. They're the worst team at running on early downs. Yet PFF Bobby, for all of his beautiful graces, cannot give up these early down runs. And they're one of the best teams in the NFL passing on early downs. They're best at passing on most downs, in fact. But he just can't give it up. And like Danny said, it just seems like that's who he is. He wants to play this balanced style. Maybe it's in an effort to protect, quote, protect. He doesn't need it, but to protect his rookie quarterback. And to his credit, it's definitely not worth it, but to his credit, Stroud has thrown against a ton of linebackers, essentially a ton of base looks, a ton of sub base looks. He hasn't been that great on him though. You're gaining so little by they have an extra linebacker on the field. It only cost us first and second down and 2 yards. Man, cut it out. Really let CJ Stroud loose, but I don't think he will. I don't think we're going to see that.
PFF Bobby, it's very sad. It's very bad. We tried to talk to our PFF Bobby.
He's a beautiful boy, but he has let us down, folks.
He's let us down. The big, beautiful PFF Bobby has let us down. That was only about 80% of what I normally get to with that one. But yeah, PFF Bobby, cut CJ Stroud loose, please.
Please.
We asked about realistic expectations for the Texans. Denny, Kyle, now we need realistic expectations for Kyler Murray after finishing as the QB12 on the dot in his 2023 debut. It wasn't a terribly accurate passing day, but it wasn't a bad passing day. Got the rushing touchdown, a little crazy scrambling legs, looked all good after tearing his ACL. What are we expecting in this game where the total is getting near 50?
I don't know. This total was so high in this game. And it makes sense. Neither of the defenses, both the defenses, especially the Texans, are so banged up. Like you pointed out, I think it was before the show, 50 or 60 players on their injury report. I thought the injury report could only contain who was on your roster. But no, they are just listing random Houstonites on their injury report. Everyone on this team is hurt. So yeah, I do expect a lot of scoring and a lot of dropbacks. The one thing, it's a 1-game sample. I wouldn't read into it too much, but I at least want to watch out for it. Is Kyler Murray's rate of throws 10 to 19 yards downfield, these intermediate, chain moving throws, was higher than at any point in his career in terms of a season-long average by almost 10%. He was trying to move the chains, throwing past the sticks more than any season we've ever seen. It's a 1-game sample. Could have just been the matchup, but also this should be a very good matchup to be aggressive at throwing against your opponent. So if they're moving away from the horizontal air raid, I expect them to move away. But if they're moving aggressively away from it, really saying Kyler Murray was not at all, this was not a match for his style. That was a complete mismatch. Just a mismatch for most quarterback style. Those are just runs. They ran the ball through the air so many times. That's how you get a lot of fantasy juice out of Kyler Murray. We're still waiting to see the rushing. They only had 2 design carries, and they brought Clayton Tune in for a tush push. But as far as the passing philosophy goes through 1 game, so much better already.
Anyone who listens to the show knows we don't like to get political, but we have to mention there was a bipartisan resolution passed by both houses of Congress to, quote, kill the horizontal raid with fire. So, kill it with fire, kill it dead, Arizona. And they
not 97 votes in the Senate, by the way.
There were 3 abstentions. I think 2 of them were on vacation. So yeah, very strong bipartisan sentiment to kill the horizontal raid with fire. And let's talk about both these guys, Kyler Murray and CJ Stroud. The first time in a real long time, the quarterback actually looks deep this week. And it was tough to get everyone into the top 12 who deserves to be in the top 12. You get after the top 6 or 7, it's Joe Burrow with a bad matchup. Surging Sam Howell against the Giants. There's Jared Goff. There's returning Justin Fields. There's Brock Purdy, CJ Stroud, Kyler Murray. You can rank those guys kind of any way you want, but refreshing to see for the first time in a while. It was actually difficult to get everyone in the top 12 who deserves to be in the top.
Yeah, Pat, last week they had all of the good teams on bye: Eagles, Dolphins, Chiefs, and someone else. This week, do this more often. Only bad teams got put on the bye.
Yeah, do it more often. The 4th team was the Rams, who Matthew Stafford's not doing it, but
fantasy fun though. They've got good fantasy guys.
Denny, you most already broke down the Texans offense. Anything to add on the receivers? It's weird because there's guys are in and out of the lineup. We don't really know who's playing. Any factoids to add on Noah Brown, Tank Dell?
Yeah.
Nico Collins, again, swears he's playing this week.
Right. So, Nico Collins returning would be significant for everybody in this passing game. With him out, Tank Dell has a 41% air yard share, which is ludicrous. I did want to mention that Tank Dell is 3rd in ESPN's open score rating, which is pretty great. Only behind Keenan Allen and some other guy I can't remember. Anyway, so Tank Dell's good, is what I'm saying, and he should still be able to get it done, even if they want to be run heavy or balanced or whatever. Noah Brown mentioned this on Tuesday's show. 75% route share since week 7, 2nd on the team in targets per route run. Second in the NFL in targets per route run over the past 2 weeks. So he's running hot, is what I'm saying. but he's running enough routes to be relevant, I think, in 12-team leagues, say where you have multiple flexes. I really do think you can throw him in there. He's out there enough. Him and Dalton Schultz are eating up the middle of the field stuff.
I almost wonder if they're going to get like a poor man's 49ers thing going, though, where if everyone's healthy, how in the world is everyone going to get their due targets? Because they all deserve the target. Even Noah Brown deserves targets at this point. But if they're all healthy, I mean, Robert Woods is banged up again. It's going to be someone's going to get left out each week in the Texans. It's going to be pretty painful.
Yes, and last week was a great slot matchup against the Bengals. Not as much this week against Arizona.
I was going to ask you guys where to rank Devin Singletary, but Denny's projecting 1.2 million carries. So it seems like I have the RB17, which sometimes feels low to me, sometimes feels very high. I have him ranked as a strong RB2, just based on workload alone and scoring.
I think low. I think scoring environment plus workload is closer to like 1-2 borderline, like 14. You're like, I'm not going to give him the RB1 designation, but I could have. Just know the threat is there. I could have if I wanted to.
Could have done it.
I want to. Yeah, but I do think so. Devin Singletary, his first game as starter for Houston was horrible, and it didn't make much sense because his underlying numbers have always been really good. I know,
except for his receiving efficiency, where he's always
I'm talking
about rushing, and I know people don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. They want to deny that Devin Singletary is good. He was great against the Bengals. I mean, great.
He was sick. He passed the eye test too. He was gashing the Bengals.
Yeah. He was making guys miss. He was getting yards after contact. So I'm kind of bullish on him.
I almost cut your mic, but I'll let you regroup. We will be right back after this. Sunday Night Football is headed to altitude this week when the Minnesota Vikings travel to Denver, Colorado for a battle with Russell Wilson and the Broncos. Coverage of the interconference matchup begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. And don't forget, find all your favorite NBC sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. How do you guys feel about the Broncos making the playoffs, by the way?
Let's get it done.
Broncos. I think the NFL is better when Russell Wilson is good. He's really fun when he's hot. And
don't tell that to Sean Payton. We'll talk about this later in the show, but don't tell that to Sean Payton, who does not want him to do anything ever.
Yeah, I have another thing. When we get to the Broncos, I have another thing. Go ahead.
When we get to the Broncos, right now we have the Chargers arriving in Green Bay, Wisconsin as field goal favorites, Kyle. Jordan Love might be a streamer, but we will start with Justin Herbert. Can he keep producing high-end QB1 numbers with the way his receiver core is right now? Everyone is banged up. We think Keenan Allen's going to play through his shoulder injury, but he seems to have a fairly significant shoulder injury. Jalen Guyton, Quentin Johnston are battling for scraps. Gerald Everett is always injured. Donald Parham's trying to contribute. Can Justin Herbert keep it up against a pretty solid Packers pass defense?
Yeah, I think for this team, the volume will be there and the talent as far as quarterback and wide receiver one goes, as Denny pointed out, Keenan Allen crushing open score, yards per route run, having I don't want to say a bounce back year because you looked at the end of his 2022 season and he looked really good and it's carrying through. But I do think it's going to be increasingly more difficult the farther you go down this roster without a guy who can stretch the field. Guyton can kind of do that, but I think it's fair to say he is a sort of fringe 53-man roster, plays a few routes, and now he's playing.
It's a bit better than that, but that's all he can do, by the way, is stretch the field. So he's not kind of a field stretcher. He just is a field stretcher. It's everything.
He's kind of a field stretcher in that he should play 20 snaps a game, and he's going to be on the field for every single snap of every offensive play they run. And the alternative is Quentin Johnston, who just can't get open, can't earn targets. I still think Justin Herbert, low-end QB1, is a very safe place to put him because he's really good. He's got a good wide receiver one. They've got, I don't want to say playmakers. They have potential around him, but I'm not super optimistic that he can keep up with the guys who can both get there rushing and passing or the best passing quarterback. So, I probably won't have him as a top 5 quarterback anytime soon.
Who wanted to mention this note about his yards per attempt and his EPA? Was that you or Denny? Someone put something in the show sheet here on Justin.
Oh, Herbert. I usually make a copy of the show sheet. I might have pasted the wrong one.
Get those out of here. They're confusing me.
That's why I don't do it. If you must know, his yards per attempt and his EPA per play are down since losing Mike Williams or something like that.
As someone told me online the other day, no one knows what EPA stands for.
No, they do not. What is expected points added?
There you go.
All right.
If you're a fan of baseball, you got to be good with these like acronyms, because man, baseball's got the goofiest.
By the way, Kyle, never quote release the tapes of our EPA debate the other day. Never ever do it.
I'm going to, by the way, when you guys get on my nerves, I'm releasing the tape.
I am pro EPA both in real life and fantasy football, by the way. We need clean water, folks. So yeah, Denny, is Jordan Love a streamer? He keeps getting away with it. He's not good, but he gets 2 touchdowns every single game. He plays just out of control enough. I feel like that he gets 2 touchdowns. Is he a streamer this week?
Yes. He has 6 touchdowns over the past 4 games. Somehow, I really don't understand it.
I don't either.
He's still insanely inaccurate as a passer. Only Matthew Stafford and Zach Wilson have a lower completion rate over expected this season. The matchup is good. Is
very good. I mean, the matchup is out of control good.
Chargers are allowing the 4th highest completion rate over expected this season, the 7th highest drop back EPA. Chargers are 23rd in pressure rate, which is a little surprising considering the Bosa guy. So he should be in a good spot. I mean, I worry about this game getting ugly. I feel like it could get ugly if the Chargers can't push the Packers.
They will.
But I mean, if they push, then I think Jordan Love has maybe a little bit of upside he can squeeze out of this matchup.
Have you guys looked at streaming quarterbacks this week? It is terrible. I think the problem is that at some point, like quarterback, and I'd say receiver to an extent, we can filter for talent, which means the waiver wire gets churned to the point where the only guys left are, well, quarterback, especially because of the injuries, but the only guys left are Aiden O'Connell, Tommy DeVito, like true nobody's. Dorian Thompson-Robinson's like Baker Mayfield's having a good season. He gets rostered over 50%. Josh Dobbs looks better than we expected. Gets rostered over 50%. So we churn down to Jordan Love is the premier streamer of the week.
It's a time of year too where a lot of teams roster 2 quarterbacks because the buys and the injuries. People a lot of times will start off with only 1 quarterback, but it is tough to stream this time of year. The buys will end relatively soon, so people have to start making business decisions and dropping quarterbacks. But I mean, if someone threw Geno Smith back, maybe you can get Geno against the Rams.
Russ was my top streamer because he was one of the 2 guys who were week 1 starters. Like, we're not talking Aiden O'Connell and Tommy DeVito, less than 50% rostered on Yahoo leagues. It was him and Jordan Love almost.
Do we fear to tread with Will Levis against the Jaguars? This was the real question.
I don't know if we're moving on to that game.
We'll get there.
No is the foreshadowing. No.
We'll get there in a minute. Kyle, real quick on Chargers, Packers. Aaron Jones, huge touch counts, lack of production. Chargers have improved against the run this year, but still a really bad overall defense. Do we like Aaron Jones to say is a low-end RB1 in this game?
I don't know if we like him as low. Yeah, touch counts. You're right. Touch counts. And he's talented. I've talked about receiver talent and quarterback talent. I think his talent matters less because he's so dependent on his team getting him near the end zone. I don't have a ton of faith in Jordan Love manufacturing those drives. But he's getting a lot of touches, and I still think he's good. So, yeah, that sounds fair.
The Dallas Cowboys' traveling 49-17 review arrives in Charlotte, North Carolina as 2-score favorites, Denny Carter. The Cowboys have finally accepted their fate as a pass-first offense, or at least we hope that they have.
You just wait.
Can we continue to trust this, quote, hella mega, I can't remember.
Nuclear, ultra, trillion.
Mega fantasy points. Are they going to produce those in these lopsided game scripts? Are they finally going to go back in their shell on the Eastern Seaboard this weekend?
I actually don't think that they are going to go back in their shell. Kyle seems skeptical, but it seems that they've done the right thing. And they have based their offense around Dak Prescott, who is good, and CeeDee Lamb, who is also quite good, and now probably the best receiver in the NFL. So, I mean, besides Tyreek Hill, I'm sticking.
What about besides Justin Jefferson? Okay,
AJ Brown, Jamar Chase.
He's probably top 5 though. He's probably in the tier 2 of these guys are also they'd be the best in a lot of other.
He's also a friend of the show. He has been on the Rotoworld Football Show. We digress. Continue.
Yeah, I mean he's here He's here in my house.
He's actually waiting to come on in the second half of the show. We should have interviewed him during the Cowboys.
He's listening to you. This is very awkward. Anyway, since week 7. The Cowboys are 11% over their expected pass rate, 20% over their expected pass rate on first downs. Okay, these are our Cowboys. It's worked very well. They lead the league in EPA per play and are 3rd in offensive success rate since week 7. So really, it's just humming along. Now, yes, the Panthers are bad in many regards, but especially bad against the run. So maybe we're not going to see what are the kids called? The giga pass heavy approach here. Okay.
Yes.
But we could still see a fair amount of passing. Carolina defense, by the way, allowing the NFL's highest rush EPA, the 7th lowest stuff rate in the league, and the 3rd highest rush yards after contact per attempt. They're bad.
Make it stop. Just say they're bad.
I mean, look on this show. I'm gonna bore you with those geeky numbers. Okay.
Real quick,
Pat, you had a good snoring bit on the show you did a few days ago.
Did you hear that? Back. Did you like that?
Yeah. I'm like halfway through this.
Denny had no reaction.
I didn't like it.
He didn't like it. By the way, Kyle, Denny referenced the Panthers horrible against the run. So what's the Tony Pollard-Jover update? He's just not getting home no matter the game script. Blowout win, like early first half blowout, clock killing mode. He's not getting home. Is he going to get home against the Panthers? I finally, probably overly drastically, dropped him outside of the top 12 this week.
I was looking at the rankings and I'm like, this is such a good matchup. Well, you don't understand. They're big favorites and they have a high implied team total. It's obviously a Tony Pollard week. I say, like, as I redeposit into my DraftKings account, like, this one, as far as this game, it is a great game. Bad, as Denny pointed out, bad defense, high implied team total, big favorites. The only thing I'll say is that up until this point, it's been as Jover as it's ever been. He's terrible in every metric. His success rate is 17% lower than Ezekiel Elliott's, but his rush yards over expected is functionally the same, as in he's more boom bust than Zeke. But when you net it all out, he looks the exact same. So to put things in perspective, that's where we're at with him. It's a great matchup. You should be starting him and be prepared for maximum pain when all of the advanced metrics go out the window and he's bad.
And this is not a bit. I'm not messing around. I do think Rico Dowdle's in play in deeper leagues, or if you're desperate like I am at running back in some leagues. He 12 carries for 79 yards and a touchdown last week in probably similar game script against the Giants. So I think 10 touches is definitely within reach for Dowdle in this game.
Very, very much so. For the Panthers, I just wrote Panthers lull. They got the lull this week on the show sheet. Frank Reich calling plays for the second time this season. He can't decide. He knows it's over. He can't decide what degree of over it is. I'll call plays this week. Is that good for Adam Thielen? I've seen some people pushing the narrative. Well, he at least targets the hell out of Adam Thielen. Oh. And I was desperate for a receiver in a league, like so desperate you have no idea. I swung a trade for Calvin Ridley and Adam Thielen 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, well, whatever. I don't have to like it, but Adam Thielen's what peak wide receiver 2 performance looks like, and since then he's caught like 6 passes.
Yeah, right.
Is it good news for him that Frank Reich's home plays?
I actually think that this Panthers defense has reached a level of Jover that makes it hard for anyone to produce, including the guy still seeing a good chunk of the targets and a good chunk of the air yards. Like he's out there and he is the wide receiver 1, but in an offense so bad and so unproductive, especially on early downs. I just don't know what we're doing with Thielen. I mean, I guess you got to throw him in there and hope against hope, but
you do.
The days of like 15 PPR points locked in, you know, those are probably not coming back without a touchdown. Okay. Well, the
bank is coming back to my house.
Well, I can't help you with that. What we need is Andy Dalton, who is way better than Bryce.
Oh, stop it. Come on. No one's that done. Please stop.
What?
He's not that. He's a rookie.
Wait a sec. Bryce Young,
9 starts. Come on.
Bryce Young will never be better than Andy Dalton.
Darn it. He's right, but still, you're not supposed to say that on air.
Sorry.
So I've been really bothered this whole segment, by the way. I said Charlotte was on the Eastern Seaboard. Is it counted on the Eastern Seaboard? Why do so many people live in this town if it's not even on the ocean, by the way? I've always been very confused by it.
Got a lot of banks here. Pat, you should know it because they'll be visiting you soon. Got a lot of banks here.
There are a lot of banks. Yeah, very good point.
Yeah. It's like a young industrious town for fintech or whatever they call it. No, it's not on the seaboard. The state.
Well, it's not on the seaboard. I know it's not on the sea, but I think like you can still call it the seaboard, maybe. But maybe it's too close to the mountains.
It feels like we need to get your guys' lawyers.
Adam's saying
it is also close to the mountains. It is also close to the mountains.
It's probably too far from the ocean to be seaboard. If I was going to live in a coastal state, I would simply live on the ocean, but that's just me.
I mean, that's a very like rare kind of thing. I mean, there's not much.
I bet 60% of the U.S. population probably lives in like an ocean county. When you think about it,
Do you think I live by the ocean? I don't.
Well, you live near the ocean.
I live 3.5 hours from the ocean.
I'm closer to the ocean than Denny is. Apparently,
you joking?
That makes sense.
No.
Wow.
I mean, from the Atlantic Ocean. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, whatever.
Denny, I didn't know you lived in like Ohio.
I know. What are you talking about? Baltimore's not that far from the ocean, is it? I'm looking this up right now.
Well, I don't live near Baltimore.
Well, now you tell me you don't live near Baltimore. And we know it's not an ocean. It's on a bay, but it's part of the ocean. We digress.
I actually live 15 minutes from you, Pat.
Okay. Good to know. We should probably get together. Yes. The Eagles and Chiefs prepare to rematch last year's Super Bowl showdown, with the Chiefs getting 3 points at home. It's actually down to 2.5, Kyle. Both these teams are coming off bye, but we will begin with the Eagles and their post-Dallas Goedert skill core. Are the rich and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith just going to get richer, or someone else actually emerge for increased looks?
Yeah, I'm not looking to the backup tight ends, which I think would be Jack Stoll, for any like meaningful fantasy production. But I do think they've been using Goddard more on screens lately. He was probably the best player in the NFL on screen specifically last year. And for the first few games of the year, I think when Shane Steichen left, he took his playbook and they're like trying to remember all the things. What did he do? The tush push. Obviously, that one's famous. Throw to A.J. Brown a lot. Let's do that one. And they left out all of the screens for Dallas Goedert. And then right as Nick Sirianni said, we think, Goddard will get going, they start dialing up more and more screens for him. Wouldn't be surprised to see those go to the running back, specifically DeAndre Swift, because this year, one of the things they've added, a wrinkle they've added to the offense, is way more passing volume to the running backs. I feel like that tends to happen when Miles Sanders is your running back versus like elite two-way type of player DeAndre Swift. Maybe that even goes up, more design targets for DeAndre Swift, who has undoubtedly earned them.
You're on mute, Pat.
I thought Kyle was going to keep talking, and I was actually, this is not a joke, Googling the Eastern Seaboard.
Oh my God.
What is considered part of the Eastern Seaboard, but no, really, really good stuff there. And just, I mean, there's no one, I'm not even ranking Jack Stoll. Are you?
I don't think I ranked him either. Maybe he was like, I try to get up to 30 just for a round number. Maybe he got to 30, but like it could be, do they still have Grant Calcaterra on this roster?
I think so.
What about the
they still have a
converted Buffalo quarterback?
No, they still have Brent Selleck, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Jeez, that's a throwback. The Zoomers have no idea.
They do have no idea. Denny, DeAndre Swift check-in. Only one rushing touchdown in his past 5 games. The touches are still great. 15 carries every week, 3 or 4 catches.
Yeah.
This is not translating to RB1 numbers because Jalen Hurts is more of a monopoly than ever on the goal line.
Yeah. Look, I mean, Philadelphia is the 3rd run heaviest team in the red zone this season. That shouldn't come as a surprise, seeing that the tush push is an automatic touchdown at the 1-yard line. But DeAndre Swift has been unlucky. I wrote about this in Regression Files a couple weeks ago, but it remains true. So only Josh Jacobs and Tony Pollard have more rushes inside the 10-yard line than Swift. Swift only has 3 touchdowns on 19 green zone carries, green zone being inside the 10. So he's run cold. He's been tackled at the 1-yard line a bunch. That's been tough for those of us who have some DeAndre Swift exposure. His role seems locked in. I know Kenneth Gainwell scored like a 20-yard touchdown last time they played. Don't worry about that. I know you worried about that at the time. Stop worrying about it now. He has at least, he has at least 18 touches in 6 straight games. Talking about DeAndre Swift. And also, folks, look, I would be remiss, and I'm never remiss, if I were not to tell you that Kansas City is the 4th most extreme run funnel defense over the past month. So I think we could see a fair bit of leaning into the run against the Chiefs.
The Chiefs have got to stop playing elite defense. It's messing up a lot of stuff.
Guys, I've got good news. Albert Okwuegbunam is on the Eagles roster. I forgot. I think they even claimed him, if I remember correctly, when the Broncos cut him. I said I don't think anyone's going to get fantasy value, in lieu of Dallas Goedert. My 58-man dynasty teams, they're open.
Now, Albert O confirms that indeed no one will be getting fantasy value.
Don't pick up Albert O. To be clear, don't
Dallas Goedert. Kyle, anything changing with the Chiefs receiver patterns heading into their Week 10 bye? This still feels like Rashee Rice or bust. we're now getting the narrative that they're protecting Kadarius Toney for the playoffs. Real good plan.
The
It's like
2026 playoffs. They're thinking he'll be ready for a
protecting Kadarius Toney for the playoffs is a real my girlfriend goes to another high school. It's not even in another county. It's actually in another state. We met online. It's kind of crazy story.
She lives in Canada.
Yeah, she does live in Canada, actually, in Alberta.
One of the provinces way up north, not one of the ones close. You couldn't get there, car nor plane.
She lives in Nunavut, or however you pronounce that one. So the Yukon territory, actually. I mean, I just look it up. There's a Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a great website. But yeah, anything changing with the Chiefs receiver patterns, Kyle?
So yes, slightly actually. Sky Moore, I guess 2 weeks ago, one game ago, functionally benched. He ran around on something like 20 to 30% of the team's dropbacks. That's way lower, like half of what it has been previously. Thank God. Rashee Rice, 89, 90, 100% routes. Checks the box score, checks the route rates. Justin Watson, that's who it was. And so if you want to pick up and play 70% routes in a shootout, Justin Watson, I wouldn't entirely blame you. He actually might be better than Sky Moore, but I've set the lowest bar to clear. So, and it didn't result in more Rashee Rice routes is what I actually care about. So yes, changes. Do we care? No, probably not.
By the way, we haven't mentioned Isaiah Pacheco's name in a while. Anything to say on this guy? Just 16, 17 carries every week. Gets a touchdown every second or third game. Not doing as much in the passing game as we would like. What do you say, Denny?
I looked into it strongly, powerfully, and I did not find anything to say that he has lost his grip on this backfield as the RB1. He's running more routes than McKinnon. He's seeing all the carries, basically. He's just not really doing anything with it. Keep on plugging with Pacheco.
Keep on keeping on, brother.
By the way, I love Wikipedia. They don't even have an Eastern Seaboard wiki. They just have an East Coast of the United States wiki.
Wow.
And they include Charlotte in it, of course, as one of the principal cities of the East Coast. But yeah, Charlotte's not the Eastern Seaboard. I agree with producer Adam. I'm sure the audience is just, hey, Pat, keep talking about the Eastern Seaboard.
They tuned in to talk about the Seaboard.
Bring back the big slurping bit Kyle did from the first 2 minutes of the show.
Please bring back the slurping.
It's good audio.
Fresh off upsetting the Buffalo Bills, the Broncos are 2.5-point home favorites against the Minnesota Vikings, Denny. We will begin with the Vikings and the potential return of Justin Jefferson. What would the Alphas return due to the Vikings' fragile post-Kirk Cousins ecosystem? A lot of moving parts here. And again, Justin Jefferson seems like legitimately questionable. It's Thursday. We unfortunately don't have a good grip on whether or not he's going to play.
Yeah.
But how would this throw this whole thing into disarray if he came back?
Yeah, I think it primarily makes Jordan Addison way shakier as a fantasy option. With Jefferson out, it's been Hawkinson seeing like 30+% of the targets, and then Addison around 20%. Seeing a lot of kind of high variance targets. So I think he could get away with it, but you might have, if you're in a 10-team league, you probably have a better option than Addison with Jefferson in the lineup, I guess is what I would say. I'm also not fully convinced that the Vikings are gonna keep passing a ton. I know that they were 1% over their expected dropback rate against the Falcons when Dobbs came in, didn't know the playbook, which is incredible. Last week against the Saints, they were 5% over their expected dropback rate. So
that's
I think
good.
it is good. It is good. Now I'm starting to doubt how I started the sentence. But we can edit that. Adam will edit that. But anyway, yeah, Addison becomes shakier. But man, Hawkinson just has the scam going in full force. The machine is going burr.
It's the money printer is burring so much for TJ. I don't even think the return of Justin Jefferson could even.
No.
And Josh Dobbs, 2 different offenses, 2 totally different systems. That's been targeting tight ends all year.
Yeah.
So it does not affect TJ Hawkinson, you would believe. Kyle, Javonte Williams just a bell cow now. They have fully committed to him. They're hiding Russell Wilson. That game Monday night was almost painful. I couldn't believe there were people after the game say, "Oh, great game from Russ. Throwback game from Russ." It wasn't a bad game from Russ. It was just if you throw the ball deep, I hope you know who Jarrett Stidham's coming into this ball game. Russ.
It was a throwback game in one of the ones where they run Thomas Rawls 20 times every time is first and second down. And then when defenses have put 14 men in the box, they didn't get called for a penalty. Then obviously Russ hits a deep one to Doug Baldwin probably at that time. It was like that. That in that sense, it was a throwback game. And yeah, we'll probably see more of that because Javonte is playing well, and they have, like you said, they've completely committed to him. Since week 7, he's seen 69% of the team's carries. And although he's not running a ton of routes, he has a 16% target share, which is really strong for a running back. And I saw a few people tweet about this in the offseason. Running backs third downs don't matter directly for fantasy points to running backs because for most third downs, you're trying to get a first down, you're throwing past the sticks. A 1 ADOT target doesn't matter. It's what they mean. It means you're a good passing downs back. And this is where you can see that break, where they are just targeting him on early downs and targeting him specifically, designing up plays for him through the air with reckless abandon, even if they're not actually putting him out there for a lot of routes. So I actually think it will hold.
Yeah, just I honestly was trying to get Javonte Williams into the top 12 this week.
I think I did.
Yeah, just too many carries and like enough receptions that I just kind of stopped fighting City Hall in that one.
Yeah.
You guys have anything to say on the Vikings backfield? It seems like Alexander Madison is going to sit. Ty Chandler was mixing in even before Madison's week 10 concussion. I couldn't quite get him in the top 24. I don't really know why. This honestly kind of like unknown syndrome. And it's a bit of a deeper week at running back, just as is the case at quarterback. But what do we expect for Ty Chandler against the Denver Broncos?
Only thing I had, what you pointed out, was that he was seeing work even before Madison went down. Madison only outtouched him 10-8 before Madison's final play of the game. So to me, if they were willing to put him in, I don't say bench their starter, but make it a true committee, now that they're down to Myles Gaskin or Kenny Nwangwu, I think we could see a lot of touches for Ty Chandler. And he looks really explosive when he touches the ball. Probably not a guy you want to touch the ball 15 to 20 times per game over the course of a full season. We'll probably see it this week. So I did have him as a top 24 running back, maybe even top 20.
Final note of this game, Russell Wilson has been under 200 yards passing in 5 straight starts. They're not doing it. They're not doing it. Folks.
Yeah, I actually don't think that he's fantasy viable.
You said you do or don't?
I don't.
Yeah,
he's not him or Jordan Love. That's because that was my.
Well, that's the thing. He's kind of Jordan Loving, where he's getting 2 touchdowns every week, but just no volume, no big plays.
No. This team, I mean, you can see it in the way they operate all the time, including at the end of that game against the Bills. They're scared to death of Russell Wilson. They do not want to trust him. And by the way, this is part of the show where I want to mention this. Cortland Sutton is asking for apologies to be sent to Russell Wilson for his, I guess, disastrous 2022 season. There will be no apologies coming from this show.
Denny, man, could you imagine if there were Galaxy Brains today? We would have had to really hammer that one.
Well, we might be able to touch on that on special Galaxy Brains next week.
Don't worry, the Brains will be bigger than ever for Thanksgiving week. The 49ers got right in week 10 against the Jaguars, and they're now 11.5-point home favorites against the road trip and Bucs, Kyle. All 3 of Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle got home for touchdowns in week 10. But what are realistic expectations for this elite skill core when it's at full strength? Brandon Ayuk only got 3 targets last week, for instance. Any way to divine like who's getting the touches from this elite skill core trio?
Yeah, so they have played, I believe it's 4 games with everyone seeing at least 70% of the routes because they've had a few partial games and a ton of games where at least one of them isn't playing. But in those 4 games, Christian McCaffrey leads all of them in targets with 24. Brandon Ayuk just behind him at 23. Deebo Samuel at 19. Those 3 guys feel more safe in the sense of they're seeing more targets. I still think you're playing George Kittle because he only has 14 targets in those games. It's a very low number for that amount of games. But he's still as efficient as he's ever been almost. He was actually a little more efficient a few years ago. But right now he's 3rd in yards per route run. He's ESPN's #1 rated tight end in the receiving metrics. He still looks just like he has in yards after the catch. I think his yards per catch is almost at a career high, if not a career high. So if he played wide receiver, I'd say this guy just doesn't see the ball enough for me to trust him. He doesn't. He plays a terrible position for fantasy purposes. He gets 3 targets and he could be the tight end 2 on the week. So you're still playing him, but I do think he has become the odd man out in this situation. And I'll say it's probably mostly down to Brandon Ayuk's breakout. Brandon Ayuk looks like a true #1 receiver this year, where I thought he was a more complimentary, strong #2 in previous years. This is like a legit breakout from him.
Yeah, week 10 was the evidence why you still can't ever bench George Kittle, even when everyone's healthy and he's only getting 3 to 4 targets because he gets matched up one-on-one with a linebacker and then baptizes him for a 66-yard touchdown.
That's really good.
It was a baptism of Devin Lloyd, who was apparently a first-round pick. Didn't remember him at all until George Kittle, quote, put him on blast. Denny, sorry, I laughed at my own terrible joke, and you guys just sat there stone faced. I was like, here comes the laughs.
I mean, I was just going to let you cook. You were having a good time by yourself.
Denny, speaking of cooking, Mike Evans, is he creeping back into the wide receiver one mix? He scores a touchdown almost every week. Tough 49ers defense, but one that has given up a lot of receiver fantasy points this year.
Yeah, look, the Bucs definitely don't want to be pass heavy, but they have no choice if they actually want to compete in games and try to score points, because they have the worst running back room in the league, like by a large margin. The Bucs have been above their expected dropback rate in 6 of the past 7 games. It hasn't generated like huge amounts of target volume for Mike Evans. He's averaging about 8 targets per game over that 7-game stretch, which is fine. I don't know. I was expecting more, but anyway, his average depth of target, his ADOT, is a little bit on the concerning side. It's at 15 right now, which is his highest mark in 5 years. Last week against Tennessee, he had an ADOT near 20. We don't really love that, because it means there's a wide range of outcomes, to put it kindly, on a guy like Mike Evans, where if he doesn't come down with a long catch or two, it's going to be ugly for his final numbers there. The Niners are the second most extreme pass funnel in the league, so I do think that Mike Evans and Godwin have a chance to both get there against San Francisco.
I have just been wondering about that, because that was very noticeable the first half of the season. That was pre-Chase Young. They looked a lot more to handle against the Jaguars last week. The Jags are the slumping Jaguars. I think they're 6-3. Maybe I can't really call them slumping. But I think some of the 49ers defensive numbers are probably not as useful as they were before the Chase Young acquisition, but we'll find out here in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Chris Godwin, by the way, is this guy even still a wide receiver 3? No touchdowns, a floor, absolutely no ceiling. Is he still even a wide receiver 3?
I don't think so. Maybe he's 36, but like he's basically like the wide receiver 30 to 35 in every expected points model, and they all have him underperforming that to a pretty concerning degree. His efficiency metrics are all falling, and he's clearly his team's like deep wide receiver 2. Like he just can't hold a candle to Mike Evans. The good teams are back this week, so maybe not.
Maybe not.
Godwin is the cover guy on the regression files. So if you'd like to look into that strongly, you can.
Didn't down very bad.
He's look, he's seen a lot of red zone, a lot of green zone targets. Evans is not. He has been tackled inside the 3-yard line thrice in recent weeks. So wow. I actually think that Godwin is a good bounce back guy going forward.
It's actually good to hear, because it's been a little sad for someone who was such a fantasy factor for such a long time. At long last, Justin Fields returns for the Bears. He's been out since week 6, Denny. The Lions have a decent defense, but have found themselves caught up in a number of shootouts of late, including last week against the Los Angeles Chargers. Yeah. Can we rush return Fields to the top 12 at quarterback? I am doing so this week. And what does it mean for DJ Moore, who was still getting a decent amount of targets at Tyson Bagent, but predictably the upside had vanished completely?
Right. So DJ Moore's ADOT is too high. The safeties are too high. The ankle sprains are too high. And DJ Moore's ADOT is too high and to be, super reliable as a PPR option. He has had like nuclear games with Justin Fields under center, a couple of them. So we like that. We also have seen the total on this Lions-Bears game rise from 45 to 48 over the past couple of days.
Wow. So
could be a good environment for DJ Moore. I actually wrote up DJ Moore in the regression files. 44% air yard share is the 4th highest mark in the NFL. He had 60% of the air yards last week for the Bears. So he's seeing some good opportunity. Hopefully, man, I just worry about Justin Fields being forced into like the Tyson Bagent role, basically. Like being
do that.
Yeah, like 7-step dropbacks and like having to like evaluate like multiple reads. Like that's not his game. When they use him as a dual threat. He's been really good for fantasy, and I'm afraid that they're not committed to that.
That's one Justin Fields mode. The other is even crazier, Josh Allen. And I think maybe they'll let him do that this week just because they're over touchdown underdogs on the road. So maybe we'll get some YOLO Justin Fields, but I agree. That is a nightmare vision. I hadn't even really considered. Well, it worked for Tyson.
I mean, we've seen them do this. They did this at the beginning of last season. They started off doing it this season where they treat him as like a athletic pocket quarterback type, where he is truly the best running quarterback like of the past 10 years or so. I think he was like one game played away last year from setting the rushing record at quarterback.
He was.
And instead they're like, all right, 1 or 2 design carries, a little bit of zone read. Like, no, you should truly unleash him on the ground. And that's also going to open up lanes for him passing. And then they started to evolve into that. Both this year and last year, they sort of had a come to Jesus moment. Like, oh, this is clearly the best avenue to use this guy. I am concerned that we've seen them not use him that way before. And, it worked. Like, it worked for Tyson Bagent. So this will be like a good litmus test for how smart this play calling is.
It's kind of that old idiom. They'll do the right thing after trying everything else first.
Yeah,
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. I'm afraid we're going to end this game with people calling for Tyson Bagent to come back.
It's definitely happening. Yeah. The Bagent contingent has been loud and proud on X.
They have.
Kyle, what do we say about the Lions running backs? We've talked about a lot this week, but it's because it's an important subject. We got Jahmyr Gibbs goal line carries last week. We've talked about too. David Montgomery gave one of them to him. We're not entirely
that first one, right? He immediately came in. And
we're not entirely sure what it all means, but just try to break down the Lions running back. It was the first game like post Jahmyr Gibbs breakout. And what do we think was sticky from last week? What do we think will be the case going forward between Gibbs and David Montgomery?
Yeah, I think a few probably sticky things to point out is that it was more of a pure rotation. And I think we saw earlier in the season, there was a very limited role when they were both active for Jahmyr Gibbs. That just wasn't the case last week. Gibbs outcarried David Montgomery. Maybe that doesn't hold, but the fact that he can hold a candle to him in terms of just overall carries, he also ran 64% of the team's routes. Early in the year, they weren't even letting him run all of the routes because he's probably not as good of a pass protector as David Montgomery. So they were using David Montgomery on too many passing downs as well. They seem to truly view it as a committee where either of them can play either role. And even if you take away the one goal line carry that David Montgomery did signal in Jahmyr Gibbs to bring, even if you take that one away, they were still giving Jahmyr Gibbs reps on the goal line. I think it's more of a rotating drive situation versus this guy plays this role. And early in the year, the role for Jahmyr Gibbs just wasn't going to cut it. I think it is there now.
And I agree with your take. And with Jahmyr Gibbs just being the more explosive player, the higher upside player, you give him somewhat comfortable rankings advantage, not like 20 spots apart, but I've got to rank 7 or 8 spots ahead of David Montgomery, which I'm sure I will live to regret. But how these things go. Denny, anything on the Bears running backs? We think Khalil Herbert is finally coming back this week, but Matt Eberflus is always, I'm not a doctor. I mean,
no.
I've met some doctors, but I don't know.
Well, like we talked about on Galaxy Brains, Matt needs to either lie or tell the truth, but he cannot keep mixing these two things. I mean, if Herbert comes back, I would expect him to reassert himself as the primary back. I don't know if that means that he gets like 80% of the touches or anything. I mean, D'Onta Foreman has performed well after being a healthy scratch for part of the season, which was one of the more confusing things that I've seen in 2023. Roschon Johnson is Jover for sure. Like he has nothing going for him on any, and he's been horrible. Okay. So I would guess like a 60-40 split between Herbert and Foreman. And I think if you have Herbert, you can toss him back in your lineup depending on your running back situation.
So he's a low end RB3. And he's in the flex mix, but it's just uncertain enough.
They also added him to the injury, or added a shin injury to his injury report, and he was limited. I believe he was 3 full practices last week and then shows up to the next practice with limited. Right. I still think he's likely to get activated, but like they don't have to rush
on
him
the
back
steps or something.
I don't know. I don't know what happened. On the steps of the plane to go back home, because it was like Thursday night last week. Banged his shin on the plane steps or whatever. I don't know. And I think they still have 1 more week to activate him before his 21-day window is up. So they could sit him out if they wanted to. Also, the limited could have been just a clean precaution. Like he doesn't need to run a full route.
Keep it live to rotoworld.com on that one. The Coping Bills are touchdown home favorites against the reeling Jets. Kyle, Someone has to win this game. It will probably be the Bills. But what, if anything, do we expect to change in the post-Ken Dorsey Buffalo offense? Let's start with James Cook in the backfield, who James Cook's football life was flashing before his eyes in Week 10. He was benched. Then he was the, quote, only good Bills player for the most important moments of the game. What do we think is going to happen with this maybe new-look Bills offense?
Yeah, he had an early fumble, was out for like 2 drives, and then breaks a long carry in which he dribbles the football off the ground. Someone punched it out, and that was the moment at which he was like, I can pick this ball up and keep running, and I'll have 3 to 5 more years in the NFL, or I can drop it, and I'll be looking at what the XFL situation is for the next year. He picked it up. He's very explosive. But, I mean, you see that game, and you understand why his team maybe is a little conservative how they use him. Do I agree with it? No. 1, because fumbles are very random. But 2, I don't think it's worth it to kit Latavius Murray or maybe Leonard Fournette in there. But I'm not confident that this coaching change is going to all of a sudden make him a bell cow back. Like, he wasn't like a bell cow back in college. His team hasn't shown any indication to use it. And the head coach is still there. It's not like they've changed the entire regime. So I'm not confident that they actually go out and change their usage for him a ton.
Yeah, that ham was greased in that game, by the way. Both teams were just like, I'm going to fumble now. And
a lot of fumbles.
Denny, real quick, I didn't ask you this, but do you have any thoughts at all what might change with Joe Brady? Or are you thinking kind of like the same chaotic muddle for the Bills offense?
Yeah, we're going to go with a chaotic muddle. I do want to reiterate that Ken Dorsey did nothing wrong.
Oh, he did. We already debated this enough, actually.
Nothing.
He did a lot wrong. It was all his
fault. Well, I want to see also, I really want to see more Stephon Diggs targets. Over the past 3 weeks, basically since they lost Dawson Knox, his ADOT's come down a little bit. They're using him a little bit more in the slot. Like, let him be the number 1 alpha outside receiver. He's not giant, but dude, he plays like he's an alpha number 1. And his target share is down to 21% over the past 3 weeks. I think part of that is just they've gotten Dalton Kincaid out there more, and he's earning targets on his own. But Diggs is still better. Give Diggs more targets, please.
They're not treating Steph Diggs like him. Denny, is Breece Hall getting enough work to remain in the top 12? It's kind of under the radar this week. Not really under the radar. The Jets waived Michael Carter. He wasn't doing anything in the box score, but he was running routes. Maybe those routes filtered down to Breece Hall. What's the Breece outlook for week 11?
That's was kind of my thought here. It looks like the Jets are done with playing their bad players, except for Zach Wilson. They're going to, but it looks like they're on their way to benching CJ Uzomah, who makes a breathtaking mistake at least once a week.
He really does. It's very strange.
Honestly, like a game turning mistake, like whether it's holding or a drop pass or whatever. He's had a disastrous season. But by the way, fine guy, CJ Uzomah.
He's a great guy.
No, but no one's saying that.
Personally, I love him. Professionally, cannot stand him. Look, so Jeremy Ruckert is supposed to play more snaps at tight end. You guys don't care about this, but
Pat, they designated Kenny Yeboah to return from IR. I think that's true. I don't know. If that's true.
So it looks, any effort to get the ball into Garrett Wilson's hands and into Breece Hall's hands, I support. For one, I'm probably not alone on that. Yeah. So I mean, Breece Hall is kind of terribly game script dependent lately, where if they fall behind, it's not going to happen for him. And he had 3 catches last week against the Raiders. He had 4 catches the week before that against the Chargers. More pass game involvement would sort of make him, less sensitive to game script, but he is dominating the backfield touches here. I have a stat that I can't find. Oh, there it is. Over past 3 games, Breece Hall has 41 rush attempts to Dalvin Cook's 7 and Michael Carter's 2. So he's seeing all of it. It's just that they can't really establish it when Zach Wilson is messing everything up.
They're like the kind of team they need to be running like 45 times a game. But their offensive line just isn't good enough.
But they can't. They can't be, as you know, because they fall behind. And once you fall behind, you can't do it.
They fall behind, but there are teams that have gotten away with that kind of approach. But you have to have a road paving offense.
Yeah, okay. I think they don't have the offensive line for it, and I don't think Breece Hall is that kind of back where you're
it would require cannon fodder Dalvin Cook carries.
But the problem with those is like Derrick Henry, you can run 40 times a game because he's really good at locking in 4 yards or 40, where Dalvin Cook is really good at locking in -2 or -6. That kills your drive instantly. But Breece Hall is also extremely boom bust. For like, as much as I love him, he's still doing the thing where he gets 2 carries and the drive is over. And then on the next drive, he opens up with a 40-yarder. It's really hard to be the run heavy team that like they maybe could be when Breece is the home run hitting type and he's not the also I can lock in 4 to 5 yards.
Real quick, the Jets are stubbornly pass heavy of late. Here are some numbers of their drop back rate over expected of late against the Eagles. 5% over, 11% over the next week against the Giants, 0% against the Chargers, and 12% over their expected drop back rate against the Raiders. What are they doing? The Raiders are a terrible rush defense. Pat's right. They should have run it literally every single play.
I was confused why they weren't just running. Like, even if it was like 2 yards, 3 series in a row, they should have just not attempted a pass. Is what I thought should have happened.
That game was close too, right? That wasn't actually one of the blowout games. Like, when you're playing in a close game against a bad run defense,
yeah,
totally. That's the spot where like don't let Zach Wilson pass. When you think, I mean, like, don't let him attempt 25, don't let him attempt 5, man.
When he passes to only target Garrett Wilson, he is living up to that end of the bargain, at least.
Yeah.
The Los Angeles Rams, I almost said St. Louis somehow, come off by with Matthew Stafford returning under center. In theory, good news, Denny, but as we discussed, Stafford just has not been good. Are Kupp and Nacua in trouble with his increasingly bad play, or does it not matter because the one thing he does is get them the ball?
All right, so here's the quick part is that Stafford has been the least accurate quarterback in the NFL this year, especially on downfield throws. The Rams have subsequently gotten balanced and or run heavy in recent weeks. I'm throwing out the Brett Rippon start. Okay, where I'm not just so everyone knows, I didn't incorporate anything into that start. I'm talking about Stafford starts here. So they're getting a little bit run heavy, but I do think Puka and Kupp can get by because they're the only games in town, right? Or the combined game in town. Over the past 3 Stafford starts, those two have combined for a 70% air yard share and a 58% target share. So I that's crazy. That's like even more extreme than Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill in Miami. The Seahawks are allowing the 8th highest target share to slot receivers. And I think that should, because Kupp is running more routes from the slot than Puka Nacua. So that should primarily benefit Kupp here. He can get off the schneid, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, Denny, I was not going to say this joke on air, but I put it in the slide. I'm going to say it anyway. You will be hearing from Tyler Higbee's lawyer, by the way.
I forgot about him.
I feel like he will inexplicably get 5 targets, but man, oh man, he is one of the least effective players in the entire NFL. Denny laid out the Rams receiver trends, Kyle. What are the Seahawks receiver trends? Everyone's always on the injury report. Pete Carroll is really in his injury report bag this year. Yeah, DNP. 3 straight days, and then play and like look totally normal, or they get in like 3 full practices and don't play. What are the Seahawks receiver trends? It does seem like all 3 are going to play this week.
Yeah, I'd assume all 3 play. So starting with the good, JSN over the past 3 weeks, which have been the entire receiver core, I believe 4 weeks ago is when DK Metcalf missed a game. 19% target share. That's a reasonable amount of targets you could get home from a fantasy perspective on that type of target share. And the bad, he's not running a full complement of routes. And the worst, his ADOT is below 3. He is earning more targets, and they're the exact same targets he was earning in weeks 1, 2, and 3. Super low value targets. His route rate might be up slightly over where it was to start the year, but he's clearly the 3rd receiver again. He's clearly the guy who, when you don't have Tyler Lockett open, when you don't have a running back open, when you don't have DK Metcalf open, let's throw it to you 2 yards downfield. So not really startable.
JSN is tearing apart Best Ball Nation, by the way. I'm witnessing some very fierce JSN debates.
Well, he was considered by some the wide receiver 1 in Seattle.
Can't say I ever understood that one, but we will move on. Denny, anything in the Rams backfield, by the way? Do we even care? Darrell Henderson seems like a 65% player. Royce Freeman near 40. Sorry that you are having a physical reaction. But anything of note with the Rams backfield? Kyron Williams, hopefully back in week 12.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm actually like angry at how horrible this backfield is. The Freeman and Henderson are splitting everything. They're splitting everything. They're splitting goal line work. They're splitting pass routes. They're splitting carries. 21 carries for Freeman over the past 2 games. 20 for Henderson. I honestly look. I spent a lot of time trying to concoct a take. I wanted a take. I want to throw it at you guys and say, player X is the guy to have. He's the you gotta play and forget the other guy. Forget player Y. I don't have it. I don't think you have to worry about either of these guys unless you're really hard up for a running back option.
This is pure. You need touches in your flex spot. That's all you're doing.
I guess.
Royce Freeman, the touches are so low quality. I don't think you can even do that.
Yeah, and also I don't see this Rams team being able to run much this week against Seattle. Seattle's run defense has been pretty good. I guess if you force me to pick one, I would go with Henderson, but just barely.
We do force you to, and you did, so that's good.
Okay.
The Dolphins come off by pushing for 2 touchdown favoritism at home, Kyle. Denny says the Dolphins have gotten exposed. His words, not mine. Actually, he don't think he said exposed, but he was dabbling with that take earlier this week. What is your take on an offense that headed into the open date, taking on a little bit of water? They did a spirited comeback against the Chiefs. Devin Achane appears to be returning this week. Achane, excuse me. What's your take on the Dolphins offense coming out of their bye?
Yeah, we'll see on Achane. He was limited, and we've seen guys get full back-to-back practices when they're on IR designated return.
All crime is legal when they're on IR.
I know.
Practices they're playing.
I know. So, this year is the first year that once you're designated, they throw you on the injury report. At first I was like, oh, that's really helpful. No, it's not. It's a complete mirage.
It is not helpful at all.
Yeah, at first I was like, oh, that's perfect. These guys, they don't have to do injury reports. At least they used to not for these guys. Now they do. They don't mean anything. They're just as useless as they ever were. So I don't know if he plays this week. I do think they need him back because that explosive element to their run game, both with Raheem Mostert seeing more work and being less efficient, and then obviously the loss of Achane has not completely evaporated, but, more or less evaporated. Their passing game also down. They're still not a bad passing team, but over the past 5 weeks, we've seen the team's touchdown rate, yards per attempt go down. And I was going to say sack rate, interception rate go down as well. Those went up, obviously. They all went in the bad direction. Not drastically, but they're losing some big plays. They're making more mistakes. I think that's probably a bit of a product of randomness, but I do think the fact that their run game is not as explosive is obviously a product of the loss of Achane.
Yeah, I think everyone watching that Chiefs-Dolphins game kind of arrived at the same take at once, and maybe it was just weird eye test stuff, but it seemed like this offense isn't the same when the run game is not the same, and it hasn't been close to the same. They need that explosive element in the running game real bad, like you were saying. That it has just kind of changed the entire operation, and they really, really need Devin Achane back, and hopefully they do get him back this week. Denny, what's going on so far with Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers in 2 games? Host Josh McDaniels, 2 really kind of wonky game scripts. It's the Giants, the least competitive team in the NFL, and then the Jets, who just can't really push you. Devontae Adams did get back up to 13 targets against the Jets. Now they're going to be in point-chasing mode for the first time without Josh McDaniels and Aiden O'Connell under center. What's the lay of the land for Devontae and Jacoby?
Well, it seems like Antonio Pierce, the interim head coach for the Raiders, is intent on doing this weird thing. And the weird thing is that he wants to put the football in the hands of his good players.
I don't get it, but we'll see how it goes.
We've actually never seen this tried in the NFL. But so far it's working for fantasy, and I get, it's working for real life. The 2-0 with Pierce. So yeah, I mean, Devontae reestablishes himself last week and makes me look absolutely silly. Okay, I'm on the set of the Happy Hour saying, think about benching Devontae Adams, and he immediately gets 5 targets on the first drive. Okay, I wanted to leave the country, and
that's why you're currently in Ecuador, by the way, because you
they have good internet, thankfully, and so Jacobs seeing a ton of volume, Adams seeing a ton of volume, Jacoby Myers no longer fantasy relevant, I don't think. Or just barely, really.
I just think the first 2 weeks aren't even really that instructive. They didn't have to do anything. The thing he did do was recommit to Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. Very good. But a third player is going to have, I think Jacoby Myers actually, it's been kind of like misleading how little production he's had.
Okay. All right. Look, Jacoby, first of all, Adams' route rate over the past 2 games for the Raiders, 91%. Jacoby Myers down to 67%. Okay. Jacoby Myers, 7 targets to 18 targets for Adams. He has 14% air yard share. That is a huge change. Look, Josh McDaniels, he willed Jacoby Myers into a wide receiver 1 role in this team. Without Josh McDaniels, we knew, and we said this on the show. We said as Josh McDaniels was fired, that it's Jover for Myers. He was the only thing keeping the Jacoby Myers industrial complex going, and now no more.
So you say Antonio Pierce is committed to smashing the Patriots mafia criminal ring?
Yeah.
Although Kyle is disputing your Jacoby Myers route.
I see that.
67% does seem pretty low.
PFF has Jack at 84.91. The targets last week weren't there. 9% target share, that obviously wouldn't cut it. 2 weeks ago, 21%. I just wouldn't be surprised if the firing of Josh McDaniels makes it look a lot less like, is Jacoby pushing? And he's just clearly the 2, which makes sense. Davante Adams is alpha number 1. Jacoby Myers is very good, but there's levels to this. And Davante will out-target significantly, almost like anyone but 10 receivers in the NFL. I think we still see that, but then the gap between Jacoby Myers and anyone else, maybe not, even still probably Josh Jacobs, is still going to be massive because the alternative is to throw to Hunter Renfrow. And that's not going to happen.
Whatever the route data is, you are both right. There's clearly been a recommitment to, okay, we have one of the alphas of all alphas in the entire NFL in Davante Adams. It was stupid that it was getting confusing. Is he even really the number 1? That was just idiotic football coaching. And Danny, we'll give you the last word, though, on Jacoby Myers, or unless maybe you don't even have one.
No, that's it. I mean, you can't start him.
No, can't. Well, yeah.
You give him the last word. He says things you don't like, and you're like, well, let's give someone else the last word.
We got him in the 35 to 40 range still. We shall see. I got Devontae back in the top 10, though. I've already used this word too many times to show. The reeling Jaguars host the Titans as nearly touchdown home favorites. Denny Carter, you were out in front on Trevor Lawrence being bad.
Look, folks,
he might not be bad, but he's really, really struggling. Is it getting to the point where he cannot support 2 top 30 receivers and Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley?
Yeah, look, I mean, all right. If we're being honest, Trevor Lawrence is still living off an amazing freshman year at Clemson.
He won a national. Oh no, that was his freshman year that he won the title.
He's still living off that. This is 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever, and he's still getting by on that. I don't.
Extreme as a take. He did also, unmask the Los Angeles Chargers in the wild card round of the playoffs last year after throwing 4 interceptions. Yes. Anyway.
I don't know, man. I don't think. Someone pushed back on that the other day, and they said, "Hey, he's still a top 25 quarterback." All right, congratulations.
Wait, you really had that interaction happening?
I did. Someone said top 25. I said, yeah, you're right. That's we're on the same page. He is a top 25.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right there with Josh Dobbs and
that is Jimmy very Garoppolo, ineffective cope
behind Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah.
So
very ineffective cope. Some of the least effective.
Man. The Ridley thing is very frustrating because he's basically seeing all his targets 6 inches from the boundary line, 30 yards downfield. And you just can't get by on that fantasy wise. That's just such a tough ask for Ridley. He's also being pressed at one of the league's highest rates, and he's that's affecting him in the worst way possible. So I do think you probably have to start him, but Christian Kirk is clearly a better fantasy option. Evan Ingram is going to keep vacuuming up short area intermediate targets. But yeah, I mean, I don't think this offense really wants to be pass heavy at all. And that's indicated in that's shown in the data. So I would expect more Travis Etienne. They couldn't do that last week because they just got too far behind. But it makes Ridley a very risky, like a 0 point floor some weeks.
Yeah, Denny,
I almost don't think you could even start Ridley.
Yeah.
He's seeing 86% of his catches have come between or outside of the numbers. When Denny says he's getting thrown 6 inches from one of the boundaries, that is the most accurate you can describe it. Is they have not given him a single layup. He has 5 catches between the numbers this year. He gets no layups. He's getting pressed, and all of his outside targets aren't quick hitting outbreaking routes. They're just go up and get a jump ball, you 28-year-old who's played 6 games in the past 10 years.
So Denny referenced the press coverage thing. There's been a movement on Twitter this week, like maybe start moving around the formation a little more because the little tiny guy cannot keep getting pressed off the line at the league's highest rate.
Right. He's not AJ Brown, like you can't just throw him out there and be like, go get the ball, big man.
Kyle, Will Levis has come back down to earth in a big way the past week. Still looks good at the eye test, but production is not following. Any positives in the underlying metrics or not really? Just a rookie quarterback who had a really great first game, was in a kind of a tough situation and is now not producing.
Yeah, even he gets like full credit for the first game. He's still fallen behind Ryan Tannehill in expected points added. He has a poor PFF passing grade, which it does dock him for how easy those touchdowns were. And they're scheming no rushing work for him. He's not giving you anything on the ground. So he's a middling to below average, exclusively pocket passer. There's like no life with that.
He is exclusively in the pocket. They should get him moving around more. He's a really good athlete, and he put up really good rushing numbers for at least one season in college. Nope, they're just not. They refuse to do it. They are not. They are a very unimaginative offense. With Deshaun Watson once again sidelined, this time for good. Steelers-Browns is checking in with an Iowa-type total. It's down to 33. This is like Iowa Northwestern at Wrigley Field. We're like, the field's really in bad shape, and receivers keep running into the wall because the end zone is like right on the field. That's a real low total for the NFL. Stunningly low total. What does Watson's loss, Kyle, do for Amari Cooper's wide receiver 2 odds? Is it DTR? I'm very confused. Is it DTR or the other guy starting, PJ Walker?
It's DTR this week. It's DTR.
Yeah. So what's it do? Yeah, DTR is turned in what is known as, quote, one of the worst starts in the history of organized football.
Yeah.
Yep. I think he's probably worse than PJ Walker, but I also think you have to try and give him a shot because we know for sure what PJ Walker is. He is just a below backup level quarterback. And it's probably true that DTR is not an NFL caliber quarterback in any sense, like not on a roster. But at this point, you have to take a shot. You have to try and find some sort of spark of life.
They're 6-3. They've won a few games with PJ Walker. I've actually been pretty surprised.
What's going to happen when they get into the playoffs and bring their PJ Walker to a Patrick Mahomes fight? They're going to get ran out of the stadium then.
Hey, who cares? He made the playoffs.
Fair enough. If the goal of the season is to make the playoffs, fair adjacent.
Well, you're not going to it's not like DTR. You're not going to be winning a wild card game with DTR. I think
you need Josh Dobbs. Do you think he could do that?
They should have had Josh Dobbs. They need to go all in on Browns football and run 50 times a game. And PJ Walker's, who had one under center for that. DTR is just going to be like torpedoing drives like left and right.
Do you know what
these guys are?
You know what I'm seeing from Browns fans? Browns fans are saying they had to let go of Dobbs because he was bad in the preseason. I mean, come on.
Yeah, come on, man. Yeah, bad in the preseason and then instantly the savior for two teams. Yeah, when my bad preseason quarterback is instant savior for two teams. But can Amari Cooper be in the top 24?
We're moving him back to wide receiver 3. This year, he has lost 5 points per game when Deshaun Watson is not starting. Like you said, they're going to be torpedoing drives. They are going to be one of the lowest play volume teams. Like you said, they probably still will run the football a lot. And when they pass, they're not going to be good at it. They're not going to do it often. And a lot of those targets will go to Amari Cooper. It doesn't matter a ton. It matters for wide receiver 3 value. That's where it's going to get him.
And Kirk Ferentz is seeing 33. Like, yikes. You guys might want to get that. Have you ever considered 34.5? No, that's an Iowa total right there. 33 is just embarrassing. Denny, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, they're attempting to coexist. Seems like they hate each other, both having bad games lately. What's going on with the Steelers receivers?
Well, look, Kenny Pickett was especially atrocious last week. And it's worth noting that the Packers were 15% under their expected drop back rate against the Packers. So we are going to see Arthur Smith levels of establishing, I think, going forward for the Steelers. Will they be able to do that every week? Probably not. Will they be able to do that here? I think so, because the Browns are a massive run funnel, and they trust Jalen Warren, who was named the starter, even though it didn't matter. And
nothing changed at all.
I know.
he did get to run out of the tunnel first. I think that was the main.
He also become a starter. He got 100 yards rushing for the first time, so that was cool.
Yeah, no, I mean,
still saw fewer carries than Najee Harris, but neither here nor there.
We digress.
Only by one. The gap closed, but the fact that they called him the starter and he still didn't outcarry Najee, it's like, come on.
Yeah, that's a little disappointing. But yeah, so I do think that, going forward, like, you're starting Deontay in PPR, you're hoping for that like target domination to come back, and you can confidently, I think, start both Steelers running backs here.
I think you can confidently start both Browns running backs. I don't think this game's going to hit the over on 33. I think it might come down even a little more too. And Kenny Pickett has been, you said, atrocious, just genuinely atrocious.
I mean, really, like the underlying numbers are nightmarish. Yeah.
I think for the Browns backfield, you can't start Kareem Hunt. He's been almost completely shut out of the backfield over the past 2 weeks.
Hold on. I think you can start Kareem Hunt because the Steelers are not going to be jumping out to a 2-score lead. The Browns are, I joked, they're going to try to run the ball 50 times. They're going to have 40 to 40.
I mean, they have to get to 50, though, for him to get to 12, because that's how
they get to 40 rush attempts. I think 22 of those are Jerome Ford's. Probably 14 or 15 of them are Kareem Hunt's.
The split over the past 2 weeks has been more drastic than that.
I think the split was going to come down now because it's going to be so much more run heavy that it's almost going to be I think it's become like a rotation where I think the touch count might not change that much for Jerome Ford. I think they're going to have to go like a full rotation because the DTR is not going to be throwing this football.
When they did this 2 weeks ago, they had no problem. I think that was a career high in touches for Jerome Ford. He got up to like 24, 25 2 weeks ago. The only thing that Hunt has going for him right now, he still sees the goal line work. I do not think that matters with this quarterback situation. You won't get there. So
I think Kareem Hunt is flex slot. It's gonna be interesting because we don't really quite know what the Browns have cooking. It's gonna be very bad. Whatever.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're cooking the nastiest meal.
We do know that. Speaking very bad. Oh my lord. Giants, Commanders, 37 total. Commanders 9.5-point favorites. Yeah, the Giants are just 9.5-point underdog. I think it's like their closest spread in like a month. Denny. Nothing to talk about with the G-men, so we'll just start with Washington. How are things looking for Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson amidst this avalanche of passing volume? There's so many pass attempts, and there's still neither one of them is quite reaching expectations. It's been very frustrating and confusing.
Yeah, you would think, that a massively pass-heavy Washington offense, if you were to say, okay, through week 10, Commanders have this third highest pass rate over expected, you say, oh, okay, Terry McLaurin's a top 10 receiver. He's not. I just checked the numbers and he's not. And then Dotson is apparently, and not a joke, completely dependent on whether Curtis Samuel plays. So I don't really know what to say beyond that. Washington has kind of weird wide receiver usage overall. They only target wide receivers on 60% of their passes, which is in the bottom half of the league. I think that the positive game script is probably good for Brian Robinson here. Hopefully McLaurin and Dotson get theirs before things get weird here. I have McLaurin in some leagues and I'm a little freaked out about starting.
Yeah, Pat, as far as the receiver target stuff goes, the reason for that is you got to keep the Logan Thomas PPR scam running, and you got to keep the Antonio Gibson PPR scam running. And he has exactly either 4 or 5 catches in back-to-back games. He did pop up in the injury report with a DNP because of toe issue. That would maybe help funnel some of the targets back to the guys we care more about, but stay locked into Rotoworld.com to check that one out.
Stay locked in. Yeah. Who has the toe? Gibson, you mean, does?
Yes.
Yeah, he didn't practice Wednesday. I was like, don't tell me Logan Thomas is hurt, man.
Well, he's the Travis Kelce of the Commanders.
Yeah, he is. You've been workshopping that one for a while, and it is true.
The only difference, he doesn't date Taylor Swift, folks. That's the only difference.
The only difference between Travis Kelce.
It's crazy that he's doing what he's doing without dating Taylor Swift. I think that's something we don't talk about enough.
It actually is stunning. He deserves more credit for it. I mean, I don't know. Do you have anything to say about the Giants?
So, okay, I said last week on several NBC platforms, I can't remember which ones, that Saquon Barkley was like a very iffy start. And I feel like that remains true because it's a little
different. There's a big difference between the Cowboys and the Commanders.
But it's this thing where you say, oh, well, they don't have any.
Tommy DeVito does not think there's a difference. He's throwing for 15 yards and 2 interceptions.
I think like apocalyptic game script for the Giants means that Saquon cannot get there usually.
Yeah, I've got him outside he's no longer an RB1. I totally agree from that perspective. I do think the Jets just need to run no matter what. The Giants are running no matter what. And even if they're down 21-0 at halftime, I think Saquon Barkley will still be getting second half carries. So I think he stays RB2 relevant. Just because I almost see no universe in which he doesn't reach at least 15 carries, especially against the Commanders. The Cowboys were one thing. So I kind of like the final days of Chip Kelly in San Francisco. Like, well, we're terrible. We're just going to run no matter what. And they did that. And there's some instances where they just run, even if you're down 28-0. I do think Saquon Barkley is that going for him. He's just real great. Real great.
Oh, and obviously, look, Washington's defense is clearly like the top streaming play against Danny DeVito this week.
It is. Yeah. Mama will be thrown from the train. The Zoomers have no idea what I'm talking about. Look at Danny DeVito's IMDb. That's all I'll say.
How far back do I have to go? Pretty far?
It's probably the late 80s.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's probably the late 80s. So, so that brings us to the end of our show.
Right.
The regression files are live. Start 'em, sit 'em will be live. Check out the waiver wire. It's still a lot of good information in there, even if your waivers have already run. My rankings are live. Denny's got a live chat tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Check that out. Really, really good stuff. By tomorrow, I mean Friday, if you were listening on Friday. So for Denny Carter, for Kyle Dvorchak, I'm Patrick Daugherty. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back later.